So today we are taking a look at Sun Wukong, one of the fighters from Unmatched. Now, Sun Wukong is specifically from Battle of Legends Volume 2. Sun Wukong is from Chinese legend. He is the Monkey King. He learned how to transform himself into other animal forms and learned how to make clones of himself. So as we take a look at Sun Wukong's character card here, we can see that he is a melee fighter with a health of 17. We see that he has 3 clones for his sidekicks. Well, kind of 3 of them. His special ability is, at the start of your turn, you may take 1 damage to summon a clone in an empty space adjacent to Sun Wukong. Do not start with any clones on the board. So what that means is Sun Wukong will start without his clones on the board, and when you want to bring one in, you have to take a health hit, and then you can put one in the space adjacent to him. Now the phrase summon here is a kind of new vocabulary term that we are adding for Unmatched. That means that you could grab one from off the board. It means that you could, if you really needed one that was way over on the other side of the board next to you, you could spend a health to bring that over. Essentially, to start off with all 3 of your clones, you're basically a health 14 hero at that point. One thing that makes these clones extremely powerful is that all 30 cards in Sun Wukong's deck are in fact innies, which means Sun Wukong himself or the clones can play them. As we can see from the artwork here, Sun Wukong seems to be quite the trickster. We're going to start with his big nasty attack. There are 2 of these. Ox form. This card's effects cannot be canceled. Well, it's an attack of 7. Yes, right, that is a printed 7. Oof. During combat, if your opponent played a card, they may boost it. So that's why it can't be canceled, so that if you play a feint into this, you're not accidentally canceling that away, and you can still boost it. So good for the opponent that they can boost their defense and bring it up so that they can absorb a little bit of that 7. But they are spending 2 cards to get past that. Next, we have Taunting Laughter. 3 copies of this. An attack of 3. Immediately, your opponent may discard 1 card from their hand. If they don't, ignore this card's value. So this is a good way to more or less force a discard, because they're pretty much not going to be wanting to take that 3 hit there. So usually they're going to do that. If it's a big beefy fighter early in the game, they may be willing to take that and hang on to their cards if they got something good. But if they got something stupid like a regroup, they're definitely going to get rid of it. Next, we'll have Infinite Strikes. An attack of 2 during combat. For each other friendly fighter adjacent to the opposing fighter, increase the value of this card by +1. And after combat, gain an action. So you gain more onto this for each friendly fighter, for each other friendly fighter you have adjacent to the opposing fighter. The main reason it was probably worded as friendly fighter was so that if a clone used this, you could get your bonus if Sun Wukong was on there. But if you're playing this in 2v2, that could include your partner's fighters. So there's a lot of other ways to get that number boosted up there. We have Rui Jingo Bang. This is a double attack or a bonus attack, which is the new mechanic that we see in this Battle of Legends Volume 2. This is Rui Jingo Bang with a value of 0. After combat, if your opponent played a defense card, tricked you is an attack of 4. So that only goes in if your opponent played a defense against Rui Jingo Bang. Rui Jingo Bang being the name of his staff. I've seen a number of different translations to it, but it basically means something along the effect of golden staff that you can do whatever with. And the thing that makes Rui Jingo Bang kind of difficult is the fact that Well, there are a lot of other attacks in there. So you can be like, okay, I don't want to play a defense, because if I play a defense, I'm going to get hit with this 4 tricked you. But if you're wrong about when you play Rui Jingo Bang, boom, and take an Ox form to the face, well, if you don't defend on Ox form, you can't boost it, so that's just 7 you're taking. So knowing when to do this is really, really key. All right, going into our defense cards, we're going to start off with Tortoise Form. This is basically just an offensive version of Ox Form. This is a defense of 5, which is stupid. The only other 2 5 defenses in the game at the time of this being published are Willow and Deadpool, so there's not many that have those. Tortoise Form, during combat, your opponent may boost their attack. So they can boost their attack to try to get over it, and a lot of times they can, especially if they go with something big initially, but they're going to have to burn 2 cards to hit you when you're playing with that. We get Golden Chainmail, 2 copies of this. Defense of 4, during combat, any combat damage you would take is dealt to the opposing fighter instead. Okay, so this is a during combat, so if they were to attack you with something that has offensive canceling, they could get that through, but there aren't a lot of things that can cancel offensively and go over a 4. The only thing that comes to mind would be Bruce's Jeet that cancels, but you'd have to have both Nunchakus played, and that would still just only bring 1 over this. So this pretty much just cancels any damage coming to Sun Wukong, and it will throw damage back at the opposing fighter. And when Sun Wukong plays this, he knows he's pretty much not going to take any damage on this, because it's going to take something really kind of crazy to get damage past that. Since it is a 4, it doesn't always deal a lot back, because it has to be a rather large attack. It's got to be, something 5 or higher coming into him to be able to deal anything back, and it would, not be a lot going back there. And if it's something, a card that could be boosted, or something like Beast Form or Forever Hide, they're just not going to throw the extra cards into it. Next, we have a card that we have seen before in Arthur's deck with Merlin. This is Bewilderment, a defense of 0. What? Defense of 0? Yep. Prevent all combat damage. That is combat damage. That is not after combat damage. And after combat, you may place your fighter in any space. So this is another one that just pretty much ignores everything on it. And also this one, since it is a 0, if there were to be some sort of, once again, offensive immediately canceling effect, like someone attacking with a feint or something, then that immediate would kick in before this during combat, and that damage would all get through. So yeah, that is a lot of really strong defense cards there for him. Next, we're going to have Phoenix Form. This is our first scheme. Sun Wukong recovers 1 health for each clone in the board. And this is a one-off card. Kind of, we'll get back to that. Obviously, playing this when you have a bunch of clones on the board is better than playing it when you don't have a lot of clones on the board. And one thing to think about this, let's go to a scenario here. Let's say we're at 10, you draw this, at the start of your next turn, you've got 2 clones on the board. You want to go ahead and put that other clone on there if you can. And here's why. This is basic math here. If you do it when you just have the 2 on there, let's say you're at 10, you play this card, you got 2 clones, you'll heal up, now you're at 12. Okay, now if you were to put this on at the start of your turn, of course you go down to 9. You would play this, you'd heal up 3, and that would get you to 12, and you can basically eke a free clone out of this card potentially. Fiery Eyes That See, this is his next scheme. Look at the opponent's hand and choose a card. Put that card at the bottom of their deck. You each draw 1 card. But this does let you bury a particular card. There's some fighters that have certain specific cards that you don't want to see, and you can actually bury one of these down at the bottom of their deck. Now it will still show back up if the game goes long enough, but you'll know it's coming. You'll be able to know when it's going to get in their hand, and you can, hide that thing for a while. This is better played earlier in the game. Later in the game, this doesn't really accomplish a lot. Now we're going to get into the versatiles, and we're going to get into 72 transformations. Got 3 of these 72 transformations. Versatile of 2. After combat, take an ox form, tortoise form, or phoenix form from your discard pile and return it to your hand. Now, when these come out, we'll kind of play a lot into this, how the game is going for you, who you're playing against. You may need to make some big giant hits. You may need to get some better defense, or you may need to be able to heal up. Usually you end up seeing ox form and phoenix form get pulled back out. There can be times to take tortoise form back, but I don't see that as much. Phoenix form, with this being a one-off, this card can really swing the entire game depending on where this is in your deck. If this thing shows up really early, and you can recycle this thing, got 372 transformations, so if they don't get fainted or canceled, that's 3 times you can pull that back off. So you could play this 4 times to potentially get 12 healing back, which is pretty wild. Getting 72 transformations very early and being in a pinch and needing some defense and not having one of your forms in your discard pile yet, that kind of sucks. So don't want that to happen. All right, we have this card. We have 4 copies of Slime Monkey. I'm throwing cards everywhere here. Slime Monkey, versatile of 2. After combat, if Sun Wukong played this card, summon a clone in Sun Wukong's space, then place Sun Wukong in a space in his zone. Now this is another way of getting some free clones. And lastly, we have Wily Fighting. This is from Robin Hood's deck. This is a versatile of 3. After combat, deal 1 damage to each opposing fighter adjacent to your fighter. So, wow, there's a lot going on here with Sun Wukong. What are some things to think about with him? What are some things to say about this? Exactly how you're going to use your clones is going to be maybe a little bit different depending on who you're playing against. A lot of times you'll see them set up in this configuration here, where you just got him sandwiched so that they can't ever go up and hit them. Now there's times where this may not be good. Ranged fighters, this can often still leave Sun Wukong open to attack because they can get in some different ways. You've got to find more unique ways to try to block him off in that case. If you have someone that has area of effect damage, like Little Red with her Never Leave the Path, which can deal damage to everyone in the zone, or something like Yanenga's Stallion Charge, which can just run through and deal damage. That can be a way that they can just clear out a bunch of clones really quickly, so you'll want to spread out more. If you're playing against like Buffy, who can move through opposing fighters, then you don't want to leave any gaps in there. Usually the best defense on him is just to kind of wall him off, and every time they go and attack a clone, they have to fight and kill it. They have to waste some resources to kill that clone, and you're only taking 1 hit. You also have to think about if you want to defend your clones. A lot of times you may be fine to just let clones eat an attack, since you can bring them back. It's pretty much just trading one of their attacks to just deal 1 damage to you, so you can just kind of soak it up that way. Now, as Sun Wukong, once he was announced to the public, and Restoration got his deck out there where everyone could see that, and he started showing up on Tabletop Simulator, a lot of people started thinking that he may be too strong. And he is really crazy strong, and it's a combination of things that do that. It's these clones that can come in pretty much at will there with just taking one hit away. That makes them really strong. Also that the clones can play literally all of the cards that Sun Wukong has. This combination of Rui Jingo Bang, which opponents really don't want to play defenses into, but this Ox form there with a 7, which tends to make them always go ahead and play into that because they're scared of it being the Ox form and they don't want to take that 7. The fact that you've got Bewilderment and Golden Chainmail with Tortoise form on top of it, that these are 4 that just pretty much cancel combat damage. I mean, unless something crazy happens, these just flat out cancel combat damage. You got 4 of those that you can do, so that they have to fight through your clones, and once they finally get a shot at the big guy himself, they just straight up have their defense canceled. And then you have the potential for Phoenix form to just keep being recycled and eventually give you 12 health over the game if this comes out at the right time. So it makes him really, really strong. There's some that say that he is too strong, and some that say that just walling yourself off with clones all the time is degenerate. That's what they say. I'm not going to go that severe into it. I'm going to say that he can be very difficult. And the first time I ever played against him was back with some play testing before he was officially released. And it was against someone that had already spent a lot of games playing as him. And it was very much a beatdown. And, partway through that game, he can get frustrating to play against because, once again, you just take forever fighting through clones. You finally get to hit him, and then it's just canceled. And your attack doesn't even do anything. And you just kind of feel like you're not doing anything at times. So I can understand how people are frustrated with it. But as we are seeing more players and more fighters get into him, we're starting to see that there are some counters to him. There's some fighters that are pretty good into him. So it's not just completely, it's not just him completely taking over everything like it seemed early on. And we'll have to see how it goes with him as it goes on further. If he is going to stay really, really strong and rival the big 3, or if people are going to find ways to deal with Sun Wukong. So this is a look at Sun Wukong. If you have any thoughts about him, you can go down into the comments section and leave those. You can give this video a big thumbs up, which is always helpful. And you can also subscribe to my channel so that you can see all the videos that I post so you don't miss anything. We'll see you around next time.